Hello and welcome to another Naughty Egg Draw. I'm Jake, and today we're going to be drawing Spyro the Dragon, but I'm only going to be using a cheap set of blender markers. So let's hop down below and see what we got. Alright, so we got here the 24-pack Artist Loft dual tip blender markers. And the packaging's a little boring, but it seems to have a pretty good range of colors in here, a couple of variants of each hue, and a list of all the colors on the back. So these markers are dual tip markers, which means that one side's going to be a brush and the other side's going to be a chisel. I like when it has both of them on here. A lot of times these cheaper markers don't have both of these. So these markers were pretty cheap as far as blender markers go. I picked them up at Michael's. They were about $65, which means that each marker would be about $2.50. But since I picked them up at Michael's, they always seem to have a 40% coupon there. So I ended up getting these guys for about $40, which brings down the price to about $1.60 per marker. Now that's pretty cheap when you start to think about the fact that Copic markers run about $8 or $9 a piece. But are these guys going to handle the same as a Copic marker? Let's find out. So I was pretty excited to shoot this video because I finally had a chance to try out my new top-down camera. And because it was my first time shooting with it, I did have some issues with the white balance, so things throughout the piece may look a little bit blown out, but I did figure it out towards the end. Now I chose to draw Spyro today because ever since they announced the new remaster of the old games coming out, I've been itching to play it. So the next best thing until that happens is I could draw a lovely picture of him for all of you. When I was drawing Spyro, I wanted to really capture the fun-loving, carefree Spyro we all know from the games, so I chose to do this pose where he seems to be flying upward with the gem in his claw to really give it some energy. I really wanted to give it a bit more energy than some of the imagery you find of Spyro online, and of course one thing I couldn't forget was Sparks, Spyro's dragonfly. Alright, so now to get to the Artist Loft markers themselves. Since I never really used these markers before, I made sure to cut a piece of marker paper that I could use as a sampler before I actually put it onto the piece. This is always good practice anyways because normally the colors that are on the caps that are shown are never 100% what they actually look like on the paper, so you always want to test them. This is also a great way to test how well the colors are going to mix with each other. Now for cheaper markers, these actually blended a lot better than I thought they would. It did take some time to really get used to how they blended. I'm not sure if it's the alcohol that was used in these, but they did seem to dry on the paper pretty fast. So when I wanted to blend, I really had to get the paper very saturated with the lighter color first. Partly that could have been from the paper I was using, but I did do a quick test with all the different blender papers that I have, and my Copic marker paper did the best. And I'll leave a link for everything I used in this down below. Now this area where I used the yellow and the orange was a great spot to test the blending abilities of these markers. Because with the purple of the body, I mainly stayed close to the color range of the markers, but with these two, the orange was much stronger than the yellow. Now, for some reason, I had an easier time blending with these two colors when I used the chisel tip over the brush tip. Mainly, I think it had to do with the amount of ink that came out. With the brush end, the orange seemed to flow out a little bit too fast, and it would take over and I couldn't blend well. But with the chisel tip, a smaller amount came out each time. Now I did stay away from using the colorless blender that came with it. Now the blender that they had seemed to dull the colors really fast, and it actually made it harder for me to blend. So I stuck with the method of using a lighter shade, and then going over the area that I want to be darker with that darker marker, and then quickly going back and using the lighter marker to really smooth out that gradient. Now because you really have to saturate the paper when blending, I could see an issue of these markers running out of ink pretty fast, but for $60 for a whole set, you're not really out that much if you do run out of the ink, and that's without using the coupon in the store for it. And remember, for that money you get 24 markers total, and I used about 11 to make this piece, so you definitely get a lot of colors out of this. But I'm getting pretty close to the end of this piece. Make sure you stay for the finished results, and I'm going to do a little bit more of a critique on the markers at the end of this video. Alright everyone, we are done, and I think Spyro looks pretty awesome, and to be honest, these markers actually worked really well for what they are. Now, one issue I did run into with these markers is that the brush tips seem to be pretty weak. Just after one drawing, this royal purple marker seems to be fraying a bit, which is going to make it really hard for me to be very precise in another drawing. Now, that could have been just that marker itself. That one could be a defect because I didn't run into that issue with any of the other markers. As I said earlier in the video, these do seem to dry up a little bit faster on the paper than a Copic marker would, so you are going to be using a little bit more ink when you use these. To be honest though, for only spending $40 for 24 of these blender markers, I'm not disappointed at all. Now, if you're someone who's been wanting to start drawing with markers, but you've been putting it off because of how expensive Copics are, honestly, I suggest picking these guys up because they're a great way to get started. And I'm sure if you guys look around on the internet, you guys can actually find them for cheaper than what I ended up getting them for. But that's pretty much it for today. Remember, if you ever want to have any of your art shown here at the end of these videos, make sure to tag me on Twitter or on Instagram using the hashtag NEFanart. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video till the end. If you haven't yet, make sure you smack that sub button, throw a like and a comment down below, and like always, keep drawing, and until next time, bye!